I think we are ready to start. So first of all, I just want to say welcome to this webinar. Today we're going to talk about something that we get a lot of questions from our customers, and that is if we can do a 360-degree leadership evaluation in Questback. And we can do that, so that's why we're here today. But first, we can talk a little bit about who we are. So my name is Randi, and I work in the customer success team here in Norway. And our job is to help our customers to get the most value out of Questback as possible. And I also have my colleague Tobias. He is our global pre-sales, and he is also an expert in Questback. So he will show us how to set up this kind of survey later. So just to start, before we go into the tool, so 360-degree leadership evaluation, what is it and why should you do it? First of all, competent and motivated leaders are really important when it comes to the success of a company. And by doing this kind of survey, you can provide your leaders by effectively mapping out their strengths and weaknesses. You can help them with finding out what impressions they give to their colleagues and also in what areas they can develop more. So basically, a 360-degree leadership evaluation will collect feedback from the manager's subordinates, their colleagues on the same level, and superiors, as well as a self-evaluation from the manager themselves. When it comes to implementing this in Questback Essentials, the best way is usually to have a combination of different theme or question blocks, and also to include some information about the role of the person that is evaluating the manager, and also have a few open-ended questions so that you can get more comments. So some examples of these theme blocks, they can be, for example, leadership qualities, their social skills, how they are with giving information and communicating with their employees, how they are able to strengthen their team, in addition to an overall assessment, and of course their strengths and areas for improvement. So some advice before we go into the tool. First of all, you need to define which leaders or which leader level should be evaluated. And then, of course, also decide which group should evaluate the leader. So in this case, we are talking about a 360-degree evaluation, but you can, of course, just have the subordinates or just the superiors to give their feedback. Then it's also important to include some information about the relationship between the one that is giving their evaluation and the leader that is being evaluated. And you can do that in the respondent data. So we will show you how to set that up later. And of course, lastly, it's important to consider using hidden identity because it is sensitive information that you are collecting. And we also have the GDPR settings in Questback that you can use. So yeah, that was just a quick introduction to 360-degree leadership evaluation. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat and we will try to answer you throughout the webinar. And of course, if you want to have a meeting or just get some more information, you can reach out to your customer success manager or send an email to csa@questback.com.
Yeah. Fantastic. Randi has done her introduction, so I'll take over from here. And my job is now to show you how things can work in Essentials when it comes to 360 leadership evaluations. I think this time around we actually start from the end, and we'll show you some finished results, and then we'll show you how easily it is to get there. And as Randi said initially, it's all about collecting information about who is to be evaluated, who is going to provide feedback, and then combining that with theme question blocks as well as open answer questions. And when you do that, and we'll show you how afterwards, then a report afterwards could look like this. Charlotte is our team leader here in Norway, one of the team leaders, and we just use her as an example here. It's by no means real data for her, it's just dummy data. but we just used her as a real life example. And report, the 360 report then could, for example, look like this. We have the question blocks here as elements here in an overview, one score per block. Then we have a breakdown according to the role. So the combined assessment of everybody that gave feedback to Charlotte was this on a scale from 1 to 6. And then you see the self-assessment of Charlotte, the leader assessment, the subordinate assessment, and the peer assessment. And if you use additional colors here, you get a heat map, and sort of you can pack an entirely long quest with a lot of information into a very powerful and neat heat map, which gives you sort of everything in one view. And then you see that the red areas, probably the ones that need most attention, while the green areas, that's where the scores are highest. Of course, a report is not just all about condensing the information into a heat map. It's also about getting more details out of it, and that can be, for example, added by a comparison, and where we sort of look a bit deeper into, okay, how does Charlotte evaluate herself, for example, versus her leaders. And we see, for example, down here, a number of elements where she is very, what can I say? She evaluates herself quite low, and she's probably underscoring there because, in fact, the scores from others are much higher, or vice versa. So it's very useful to get that 360 view, as Randi said, from different angles, getting input for the same person, and then you can sort of compare them very easily and see, are there deviations or are they the same? Of course, with our word cloud capabilities and dummy text here, you can also get visualized keywords about strength and improvement. And strength and improvements are actually chosen by purpose, because 360 evaluations are by default or meant to be something positive. It's not meant to be critics, or it's not meant to be to punish somebody by collecting a lot of bad feedback. It's all about learning and developing and highlighting strength where things are good yet can be built on further, and areas to improve. Gives everything sort of a bit of a positive twist, and allows the person to be evaluated, also to learn from it and to make things better. Of course, such a report can also then include more details, and whether you visualize that in a spider chart with various elements, or in a bar chart or columns, is really up for you guys to define. But that's sort of a finished product on how 360 evaluations could look like. So that's the output, the report. You wondered, and so of course, how does the input side look? And then a quest, a survey, would then typically look like this, where you say, and you see that the red areas, these are dynamic data, and we'll show you afterwards how you can put them in there. So Bror here gets an invitation and says, you're invited now to provide feedback to Charlotte, and your role is you are being the leader of Charlotte, and therefore take your leader hat or your leader glasses on and provide feedback through that. And then, so it's all about, this quest here is all about Charlotte. The input given here by Bror is from him in his role as leader. And then as we see here, the information about Charlotte can also be pulled through, and you see that the question blocks, the theme blocks that Randi mentioned here, for example, leadership skills with a scale from 1 to 6, which is very typical here in Norway. Obviously, if you are operating in a different country where a different scale is relevant, 1 to 5, or where 1 is the best value and 6 is the lowest value, you're absolutely free to adjust that to your local customs, as long as the people that are invited to provide feedback understand the scale. In Norway, where we're located, 1 to 6 is so known,
Yeah.
that it doesn't require any further explanation. However, if you feel that there is a need for further explanation, there's always room for that. So leadership skills are often combined with a little comment field, so you can further elaborate on the skills, and then social skills, etc. So this is the finished survey. The question then is how to get there, how to, for you as a user, a customer, to work in Essentials so that you get such a 360 quest out, and that you also then get the reports out that we see. It all starts obviously by setting up a 360 management feedback that you can also base on templates that we provide, or that you can base on templates that you can get through collaborating with our customer success team. So reaching out to us is in that sense never wrong if you need a helping hand in starting up your work there. A quest, as you know, includes here in the designer the structure of the quest, where you then typically say, I have a matrix question for that question block, that theme block. I label it skills, and then you see the tag here, and I'll come back to the tag and why it ends up there and what it does. And then you sort of have the sub questions here about where you collect feedback, and the scale from 1 to 6 here. And I said, if you want to have a scale from 1 to 5, you would remove the 6. If you want a different labeling from strongly agree to strongly disagree, you change the labeling here. So that's all for grabs. Important is that these question blocks that you add for leadership skills and for social skills here all have the same scale, because only then you can combine them in a report and a comparison afterwards. So you typically add a question block, a matrix question here for one of the topic, with a number of sub questions where you would like sort of granular feedback, combined here with an open answer question, open answer long, where people can provide extra feedback. The reason you might wonder, why do you have a question text here and an extra comment field here? The question text that is added here is typically the short version that we will use afterwards in the reporting, while the additional information that is added here and also here is something that is then being displayed in the quest. So that's just yet another way to sort of distinguish between what should the people that provide feedback see and what would you like to use in the reporting for that. The next question then obviously is that information about role, who is invited in which role, and there you will need to do some preparation work outside of Essentials. Let me see whether I can find good example for this. Just bear with us for a second. Here we go. Typically, what we always recommend with 360 evaluation feedback is that you get a list of people in Excel, ideally, and you add their email addresses. These are the people that you invite to provide feedback. And typically, because they're your employees, you know their name, so you can address them personally in an invitation. You know who they should evaluate, and you ideally and typically already know their role towards that person. So Broer, the example we've already seen, he is to provide feedback to Charlotte as her leader. Pontus, Randi, and Simon, they're also to provide feedback to Charlotte, but in their different role as subordinates. Kasse, Otto, and Tobias here are peers, and Charlotte is invited herself to provide feedback on her own capabilities. So that's how you map out the different roles. And these are typically the fields that we recommend to include: email addresses, the role, and the person to be evaluated. These three are, in a sense, mandatory. You need to have them included. whether you include the name of the person to address him personally or not is a bit up for, is it maybe a bit of a question of state. It's not mandatory or necessary, but it's typically useful to have it. So get such a structure in place in Excel, and then you would go and people that have already worked with feedback certainly recognize the structure here. It's all about respondent data, as we call it, because what you would do then is you would have that file, and you would simply go to distribution here, and you would upload the file, and then the people that are included are then invited, and the information from the Excel file is being added to what we call custom fields. Once the information is here in the custom fields, then as we've seen, and as you certainly know and have seen from other cases here, now this text is in Norwegian. We didn't do quite all the translations, but you see you can address people in an email invitation. Dear name, dear Randi, you are to evaluate this and this person. You can use this information here also in the designer, in the settings here, to address them at the beginning. This is what I wanted to show you at the beginning of the quest, where you say, dear Bror, if the invitation, if it's indeed Bror's version of the survey, you are evaluating Charlotte as her leader, or dear Randi, you're evaluating Charlotte as her subordinate. So that way, getting the files ready here, the information ready, uploaded as respondent data, and then start to work with it. So that's on the quest design part, and most of you have certainly already worked with that. And for the ones that wonder where do these tags come from, this bracket, exclamation mark, etc., you don't need to hard code it yourself. All you need to do is to upload the data as respondent data, as we've seen under distribution, and then they become here available as in the so-called the tag picker in the dropdown, where you can place them where you would like to have them visualized. The beauty of respondent data is that it's not just available here on the questionnaire side to customize and personalize the survey, as we've seen here. So by putting the tag manager here, everybody that replies knows now I need to provide feedback to Charlotte. The information that is being uploaded is then also fully available in the reporting side of things for analysis and reporting. In this particular example, we've already seen a bit the outcome of it. We have here a drill down, a comparison between various data sets or series, as we call it. And you already know, I guess, the answer to what we're going to explain to you. These data here, they're defined by filters that are based on the roles that are uploaded. So of all the feedback provided, we can drill down and slice and dice and say, okay, these are data that are provided by Charlotte on her own role. These are from her leader and subordinate. And to do that, it's all about filters here. That's the first step. You go into the filter settings, you create the filter, and then the filter is based on the respondent data and the role, where you say self, that's the filter self. The subordinate is based on the same role, that is the filter subordinate. So that's the first step. You define filters based on the roles. The second step then in the actual report here is where do we have it? That you start to use these filters, where you say in the overview here in the collection where we combine, or in the collection where we combine all these question blocks, for that heat map view, we define a comparison where you say filter self is for this series, filter leader is for this series, etc. So uploading the role as information, defining filters based on them, and then using the filter in a comparison leads us to the finished product here. Just as a recap, also, this is nothing particularly or specifically designed for 360s, but it's very useful in 360s. But in that collection, we have that we can sort of flag the table view as the primary view. And in the display settings, we have the table colors, which then obviously give us that nice heat map where you instantly see where the good scores are and where the scores are that are where probably some improvements need to take place. So far, so good.
Yeah.
So far, so good. Okay, let's get it a bit more advanced then. Obviously, every company probably has more than one leader.
Yeah.
And here in the Oslo office, we have a couple of leaders, and Charlotte is one of them, and Yasin is another one. And obviously, to make things, to get most out of Essentials and to get most out of your 360 work here, it might make sense that we include evaluations of more than one leader in the same quest, because as long as you have data in the same quest, it's the same database, and you can slice and dice and compare even more and find out patterns and see how the various leaders compare against each other, and see where things are good or things need to be improved. So Yasin, the second leader here, exactly the same prep work. One creates a list here of people that are to be invited to provide feedback now about Yasin in their respective role here. And obviously, you already see here, the same person could also be invited several times, and then but to provide feedback about different people in a different role compared to each other. So it's by no means so that Christopher here can only be invited once to the survey to provide feedback as subordinate for Yasin, but he could also be invited to provide feedback to one of his colleagues as a peer. Or if Christopher had a team on his own, he could be invited there as a team leader for others, or as a self-evaluation. So by operating here with different roles and different managers for the same person, you can sort of actually invite the same person several times and collect feedback that way. So Yasin here, Yasin's people with subordinates and leaders are also being invited here to the same quest here. Now back to the distribution, where we not only invite the ones for Charlotte, but also we invite here, for example, Mohammed, that is to provide feedback to Yasin as his subordinate. And when then Mohammed starts to reply, then obviously, again, the dynamic text here, he will be asked to provide feedback to Yasin in his role as subordinate. On the reporting side, and I think that's where really the power is, on the reporting side then, let me see and find the right tab to show you here. Including several leaders into the same 360 evaluation quest provides really this capability to compare data against each other. And again, everything, like any analysis, starts with a filter. Here we define two filters, one for Yasin, so we say now we want to have his feedback, versus a second filter for Charlotte. A report that we could set up then could, for example, be an overall report for the local management, where we say, okay, I would like to have included all the data of my local leaders here in Oslo, and I'll show you the finished result first. So we see all the data, and then I would like to see, okay, and now I, as a viewer, as the person that manages in all the team, now I would like to drill down to Charlotte and say, okay, how does Charlotte score? and I see 25 responses here displayed in various ways. Or I could say, how does Yasin score? So I, as a viewer, can sort of check how you see now the colors have changed, the scores have changed, because now it's Yasin's data and no Charlotte's data. And as long as I combine both Yasin's feedback and Charlotte's feedback in the same quest, I can easily get such a live report. And how to get there by this with this filter selection for viewer is all straightforward, because all we would do here in reports is that we would set up a report, and then we would say in the settings that the viewer here should be able to drill down and select either Charlotte or Yasin, and that way you see either all data for all the leaders combined, or you can drill down together. A different way of working with that same approach of comparing leaders against each other could, for example, be that you set up another report where we say, now we would like to compare here, when it comes, for example, leadership skills here, we would like to compare the data for Charlotte versus the data for Yasin. So it's the same approach. We set up a comparison, but we're not drilling down according to roles, as in the previous example there with Charlotte. But now we say we would like to compare Charlotte's data versus Yasin's data. And then a report could, for example, look like this on an aggregate level for all the leadership skills questions. We see that Charlotte scores marginally higher than Yasin, but basically the same. But if we drill down a bit further, we see there starts to be differences. In some questions, she scores higher, while Yasin scores higher in other questions. That's one visualization with an area. Same can be done for the social skills, and also if you prefer a radar chart, then you can also compare like this and say, okay, still a bit similar, but we see that Yasin scores slightly higher when it comes to receiving constructive feedback. Communication, on the other hand, we see Yasin scores a bit higher, and there we can see there are indeed a number of differences when it comes to communicating and updates and decisions. So again, all starts with preparing the data, knowing who is to be invited in which role to provide feedback about whom. Second step is to invite these people here in the distribution into a quest that includes these question blocks about skills as a matrix with open answer questions. Typically, you use the tags. Where do we have it here? The tags to customize the report. And then from the analysis and reporting point of view, as we've seen, everything starts with filters based on the data that you upload. And then you start to play around with reports where you either set up comparisons for an individual leader with comparisons for roles, or as long as you combine several leaders in the same report, you can also start to compare their feedback. We said it would take half an hour, the webinar. We're basically through.
Yeah.
Was there any question?
Actually, no questions.
No questions.
The viewers. So I think it's all pretty clear.
Then I'll just give you. I use last 30 seconds, obviously, to round up, because we always say in Essentials, it's not just about data collection and not just about reporting. It's also about follow-up.
Yeah.
So in follow-up here, we see the individual responses, and also any filter that are created previously can also be applied here. And you can sort of learn about the feedback here on an individual level. And of course, not least also, if you really want to make sure that if somebody gets a very low score, then instant action should be taken. So you can, for example, and that's just an example, set up a notification, an automated alert saying whenever somebody gives a very low score on the overall, has the role subordinate, and has actually is evaluating Charlotte, then for example, the HR team should be alerted instantly
Yeah.
for follow-up. So the roles here that we upload, that preparation work in Excel, can not just be used for live reports, but equally for follow-up. Very good. If there's no further question, I think we have covered what we wanted to say. And again, Randi and her team, I guess, are eagerly waiting for your calls so that they can help you setting up your own 360 evaluations in your account for your leaders.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining the webinar. And then, we'll see you in the next webinar.
Very good. Thank you.